Well, joining me this morning, I'm delighted to say, very festive, William Barclay, undergraduate student of philosophy and politics, and also Jack Barwell, Conservative campaign manager. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, David.
Morning.
That is a heck of a shirt.
Thank you. It's new, actually.
Is it?
Yeah.
Did they have one in your size?
I'll be really honest, I bought it yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you?
So...
And you borrowed my time.
I did, David. I just relied on you to save the day.
Well, bless you, bless you. Can I just start? Just in terms of this, we're looking at headlines like this. The Sunday Express cuts force HMS Queen Elizabeth out of action. We've got lots of things here about Rachel Reeves, the Grinch. Rachel Reeves steals 45% of your donations. This is based on national insurance, the employer national insurance contributions. As young people, how optimistic are you about the future of this country?
I think it's probably right now, it's definitely a time for... It's not a great time of optimism, especially for young people. I think lots of young people are very disenfranchised with politics. I think that's why you've seen a significant sway to reform in recent weeks and months, especially with young people. I think it's a sort of growing and emerging battle space. Who's going to sort of win the short-form video content battle? Because lots of young people, most of the young people I know, myself included in that, most of the news that you consume really is sort of TikTok, Twitter, Instagram.
That's so interesting, because it's not something I've embraced recently until I've watched operations like Reform and Nigel Farage. He's huge on TikTok. Is that where you get your news?
I get my news from multiple forms. I read some of the papers, I watch some of the shows, including TalkTV, to give you a shout-out. So. But I also think social media is a huge platform. I think if you're a young person in today's society, and if you don't mind me saying, particularly young men, I feel they are very disenfranchised. I feel they don't have much hope about society, not because they don't believe in the British dream, but because the British dream has been broken for them, because society feels stacked against them. We know that young, white, working class men are now one of the most unlikely groups to get into university, and affirmative action is one of the reasons behind that. Social media is a different platform. It's not the traditional forms of media, it's not the traditional liberal establishment that are force-feeding narratives, and people can end up there because they want to hear a different type of content.
So that's really interesting. Just in terms of your own experience, what do you like about the delivery of those political messages in short form on TikTok, for example? Is it the immediacy of it, or is it a trusted source?
Yeah, I think as... like about it is an interesting thing. I think a lot of young people, it's not something they're intentional or conscious about. It's just the sort of road they've gone down without really realising it. It's completely underpinned by sort of instant gratification. Instant gratification in terms of political message now. If we can give you a political message that rewards your sort of viewpoints and prejudices immediately, then that's something that
well, that's really interesting, just in terms of that. So Reform is doing very well, I know that, in terms of the short form and TikTok and all the rest of it. Is it because, is there a message there to the other political parties to say you need to up your game?
Definitely, 100%, no doubt.
Would you agree?
Somewhat, I would agree, and I think that it's been woeful how poor other parties, including my own, the Conservatives, have been.
Why is that? Why are your lot so terrible?
Well, that's a very broad question, David.
I meant just in terms of
specifically on social media. I mean, we've only got 5 minutes. Specifically on social media, I think it's because the people at the top of these parties are not as new and reinvigorated. I think there are people that are still running those parties, working in organisations, think tanks that are advising them, that are very stuck in the past. Lots of older people who are maybe not in touch with younger people. For me, I've been shouting for a while now for younger representation in the elected positions of these parties.
But what's so interesting to me is that back when I was growing up, the young Conservatives were the lifeblood of the Conservative Party.
They're not today, because we have a system where it's all fed into the main party. Yeah. We need more youth reform within these party wings in order to give young people the voice they need. And I think the party is just starting to listen to that. The new chairman, some of the shadow cabinet.
Who's to blame for that? Cameron?
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's just one person.
But he was all about centralisation, wasn't he?
He was, and some of that came from David Cameron. But if you have an issue that runs for 20, 30 years, there's going to be multiple different people that have had a chance to fix it and haven't. Now, to be fair to Kemi, her new team are looking into this, and Nigel Huddleston, one of the chairs of the party, is making youth reform a key pillar of his strategy. So we need to see more of that new radical thinking on not just youth reform, but many different issues. But can I also say that this is just equally an issue for the Labour Party? They're losing people to the Greens in the same way that we're losing people to reform of a younger age.
It's really interesting that. And I have to go to a break. Just to encapsulate to the other parties, what's your message, just building on that, what's your message to the other parties about delivery of message and which channels they target?
It's a very good question. I think it's a sort of trade-off, because you want to be able to control those mediums, but equally when you take to those sort of avenues, when you use social media, you sacrifice on the sort of nuance, and you go for sort of clarity. And I think they've got to just be aware of that trade-off, because you don't want to sacrifice what you really think, what's really valuable to the public, in the sort of name of just appealing to young people who don't, you know, as the statistics show, aren't that encouraged in voting anyway.
Well, I'm not sure that's true anymore. I actually have met some very enfranchised young people who are desperate for change and who are going out to vote. Stay where you are, chaps. Will and Jack will be back after this break. Someone was telling me they're snowing where they are. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. It's meant to be mild. It's meant to be windy as well. And, of course, massive travel chaos, as we heard from Simon Calder a little earlier on. I'm in the middle of the Future Politics panel with William Barclay, undergraduate student of philosophy and politics, and Jack Barwell, Conservative campaign manager. Should we talk about Rachel Reeves? I mean, we were talking about this earlier. The fact is that she's so intransigent. And Keir Starmer, I listened to him at a select committee, just repeating verbatim the same lines and showing absolutely no empathy to anyone who's struggling in this country. Now, Rachel Reeves insists she won't gaslight working people again over her plans to turn around the economy. Instead of actually giving us a vision and optimism for this great country, what she does is she's launched a really scathing attack on Reform UK and saying Nigel Farage hasn't got a clue. She goes on to defend her approach, even though the bank is saying we're on the brink of stagnation. She says, oh, well, we're going to improve things in the new year. We're taking on vested interest. But instead of actually telling us what she's doing, she launched a broadside at Nigel Farage. What is Nigel Farage's answer to the economy? How is he going to make working people better off? He has no idea. It's a very odd tactic.
Yeah, but I think it's something that needs to be done. I think there's definitely merit to what you first said, David. I think that Labour are struggling to communicate a sort of actual vision and a vision for hope, and I think Keir Starmer's got a real problem in terms of his sort of oratory, that he does just sort of repeat the same lines. That said, I think Labour and the Conservatives, they both need to acknowledge the threat of reform. Sort of the good discussion we were just having.
But they've all called reform swivel-eyed loonies in the past.
Yeah, and I think they've got to move away from that. But for me, as a young voter, my view on reform is they can be vulnerable to this charge that actually they look to sort of hijack issues. I think in terms of substantive economic plans, I think it's a fair criticism from her. It's lacking at the moment from reform. I think Nigel Farage obviously is a very effective political operator, but on issues of migration and the economy, is he someone that's looking to just hijack those issues, to weaponise them, or is he someone that's actually trying to solve them? I don't know.
Which do you think it is?
I think he is looking... I'm not sure I agree with the word hijack. I think Nigel Farage is an excellent communicator and does a very good job of highlighting the issues. That doesn't always mean he has the solution. But let's just start at the start, David. So let's start by telling the truth. Labour came in with no vision at all. They came in with a manifesto that they claimed was going to fix the economy. Then they scrapped the manifesto, and now they're basically trying to scrap the economy, as far as I see it. We have a government that says their 22 billion black hole is what they're having to fix, yet there's 12 billion for train drivers already on £65,000 a year, 8 billion for an energy company that won't even produce energy, and 5 billion for a national wealth fund. And any private business owner knows it's a joke to suggest the government creates wealth. No, it's business that creates wealth.
Correct.
So Labour have no credibility on the economy. But politics isn't a game of one side or the other all the time. It could also be true that Nigel Farage needs to demonstrate more credibility for the economy. At the last election, the IFS said Reform wanted tax cuts that would cost 90 billion and spending increases that would cost 50 billion. So maybe it could be true that neither party is in a perfect position on the economy at the moment. And that's not to say that the Conservative Party is perfect either. But I just don't think we have to have such red lines.
Let me just throw out to you what those policies were that Reform ran on. So at the moment, the tax threshold, 12,500, that would be lifted to 20,000. That would take immediately 6 million people out of tax completely. That, I think, would be a game changer. The higher threshold goes from 50,000 to 70,000. Corporation tax lifted to 100,000. Your point is really valid. This is SMEs that make wealth in this country. And at the moment, the SMEs, and I've heard from many of them saying, I'm giving up. I'm actually not going to bother because it's not worth my while employing people, especially with employers' national insurance.
David, I completely agree. And I think that both the policies you've just said are individually good policies. But I want to see politics to be done differently. I want to do things differently. And what that means is we do need a bit of honesty about how we're going to afford those policies. And if Nigel Farage was sitting in the studio today, I would say, what is the way that we go about affording what I think are two very sensible, common sense policies? We do need to have grown-up thinking, and that includes honesty with the public. The public cannot afford to be taken for another ride by a politician who doesn't know how to pay for their promises. Again, though, that does not mean that Labour are in any way not ballsing up the economy. It's common sense to the ordinary people that they're doing that as well.
It's interesting, actually, and you mentioned about the threat from reform. The Observer this morning, if I've got it here, the front page of the Observer is also talking about let's not rush to impose anything on donations from political parties, because there is a real concern here that actually they would have, I can't find it, but they would have oh, here it is. So the Observer this morning says, ministers resist rush to block Musk, millions going to Farage. This is the whole point. Elon Musk, Nick Candy and Nigel Farage all seen at Mar-a-Lago. Nigel sort of saying, well, 100 million quid is coming from Elon Musk. The political class absolutely apoplectic about that. But it's OK for Keir Starmer if you get into bed with BlackRock, for example, and that the corporate donations through UK companies are fine as long as it doesn't go anywhere near any right-wing party.
Yeah, I think Keir Starmer will probably say that those conversations with BlackRock were sort of in his capacity as Prime Minister to generate more private investment in the UK. I don't think
I'm sure he
BlackRock was suggesting there was going to be a sort of £100 million donation to the Labour Party. I think the point on Elon Musk is we live in an age now where you have a certain group of billionaires that also control the tech space. So Elon Musk controls X, the largest, forum we have in the world right now for public discussion and discourse around politics. He controls that space. As he's looking to move himself into politics, he's one of Donald Trump's sort of closest allies now. I think there should be real trepidation and anxiety about how these. Look, I don't know the full details of the report, but to me, on the face of things, inhibiting somewhat the power and the leverage that these billionaires have over our day-to-day politics doesn't seem to me to be an awful idea.
So this is the IPPR report, the Institute for Public Policy Research. They said they've been looking into this for a long time, before the rise of Musk and Trump and before his election. And they say we've had a huge increase in what we call mega donors, donors giving more than £1 million to a party in 1 year. I do agree with you, actually. It does seem wrong that if you have very wealthy people, they can control the narrative by chucking cash at something. This isn't the United States.
No, and I think, David, what we need to do, going back to that point about social media at the start, we need to get out of 5-second soundbite conversations. We need to have a bit of nuance in politics and actually believe that ordinary people are clever enough to listen along, because newsflash, they are. So multiple things can be true at the same time. It can both be true that Keir Starmer has no foot to stand on. He's taken massive donations privately from Lord Ali, which only came out after the general election.
And the Tories from Sainsbury's.
And the Tories as well. This is not a point about saying that one party is right and another party is wrong. What we do, though, need is consistency. So we're going to introduce a bill. I actually probably think it is a good idea that we limit how much an individual can spend. That doesn't mean Elon Musk can't invest at all, and he has a right to spend his money as he wants to. We should probably cap it at the right level across the board. But can we just be clear about one thing? Elon Musk is a very rich billionaire, and he's looking to put a very big donation into a party that claims to be about ordinary people rising up together against the rich establishment. Now, that doesn't quite make sense to me, and I actually think reforms branding-wise would be better focusing more on a campaign of recruiting lots of young people, lots of ordinary people to invest a little bit and become members, as Nigel Farage, to be fair to his credit, has done in the last few days, and I think he's done quite a good job at that. I'm not actually sure the Musk £100 million donation at all sits with the brand.
I mean, it's very interesting. How much of this is sort of dangling a carrot? I get the sense that actually this is a publicity stunt.
I think you possibly could be right about. But I think it's very clear to everyone that Elon Musk is becoming increasingly interested in European politics and establishment politics, and what started.
And he hates Keir Starmer.
Yeah, and what started out as sort of tweeting a dozen times a day about politics is now becoming actually something real that I do think sort of the political establishment need to think about.
Let me just read you this one. Good morning, David. This is from Claire. Good morning, David, and a Merry Christmas to you and your team at Talk. Merry Christmas to you, and thank you for that. I disagree with Jack Barwell. Labour came in with no vision. No, Labour knew exactly what they wanted: to disengage, disenfranchise the British people of this country. He's a closet Corbynite. I don't think he's even that closet, actually, and has been all along. He wants to destabilise the country. I'm not sure it's that simple.
Well, Claire is right. I think Keir Starmer did always want to do this. What I meant, Claire, was that they came in with no vision that they sold to the public. Whether they had something in closed-off little SW1 rooms might be absolutely right. And Claire, both you and I are really frustrated that ordinary people have been taken for a ride by this government.
Well, one for you here. This is Anne. Good morning to you. Look, Nigel and his team will do a much better job. The team behind him are very capable also. Nigel doesn't have to give away too much at this stage. I'm sure he will have lots more to say close to the election. Happy Christmas.
It could well be true. I'm not that well acquainted with who Nigel's got supporting him behind him in his office, but what I would say is if you look at his rhetoric and his responses to sort of touchstone issues, the things he can say can strike one. They certainly strike me as dangerous, opportunistic. I don't think there's actually a sort of serious level of concern in some of the things he says. I'm not saying that makes him a bad person. I'm not saying that means that he doesn't ultimately care about what's best for the British people. I'm just saying...
What do you mean? Give me an example of a lack of concern.
I think there was lots of criticism of what he said after the riots in Southport, that the questions he was raising about the police weren't timed well, and I think there's some merit to that criticism. I think Nigel Farage, love him or hate him or about his politics and his views, there's definitely something to say that actually at this stage in the electoral cycle, he is opportunistic in his language, and sometimes he's purposefully ambiguous in a way that can be dangerous. And I think in that particular instance, I think that criticism was probably right for him. I think that reform, let's see what they present at the next election, but I think at the moment this is a party that sometimes can benefit from more division than unity in British politics.
Let's move on. I want to talk about the youth mobility scheme. Labour very keen to get this up and running. This is the deal with the EU over free movement of young people. Apparently it's on the cards, according to Stella Creasy. She says it's like pushing at an open door. I doubt that. She says it's a hot topic for the British government and the European Commission. I mean, this is the whole point. Obviously, I'm a fervent Brexiteer. We still haven't Brexited as far as I'm concerned. One of the things, and Charlie and I were talking about this, and I think one of the downsides is the lack of the ability for young people to have experience in other countries. That being said, I'm deeply nervous this is a backdoor into changing the rules relationship with the EU, and also if Starmer thinks the EU is a pushover, he's got another thing coming.
Quite right, David. We're not against youth mobility schemes. In fact, I believe we have a system in the Commonwealth where if you're under 25 from other Commonwealth countries, you can come into this country. Having said that, if it's such a good scheme, if Stella Creasy and the Labour government want to paint it as such a popular thing, why didn't they tell us about it before the election? Why not put it in the manifesto? Why not run on it and get the British support?
But actually, it's a really good point. If they put that in the manifesto, wouldn't they have got all the young people to vote for them?
Potentially, I think that could be a good point. I think the Labour Party have got a serious question to address about how they position themselves in terms of trade with the EU versus Donald Trump coming into
and of course Mandelson. I mean, it's interesting, a government spokesperson said there are no plans for a mobility scheme and we will not return to freedom of movement. Of course, and as I say, that I think actually just be very careful with the EU. They are very good at negotiating, as they proved before. Let's just move on and talk about terrible shoes like your ones, which you happen to be wearing. I don't think they're that bad.
That's kind of you to say.
Yes,
I like them as well. Some of my friends don't.
You got dressed in the dark this morning. You just picked out the nearest ones. Apparently, German sandal maker Birkenstock posted higher sales and profits. Ugly clogs prove a hit with shoppers. Apparently, sales jumped 21% to 1.5 billion over the year to September the 30th. Profits more than doubled. This is all to do with celebrities like Kendall Jenner, Katie Holmes. Apparently, they... Do you know what I'm talking about, these Birkenstock?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, why? Because they were in the Barbie film.
No, just because it's just everyone's wearing Birkenstocks at the moment.
We should have a picture of the Birkenstocks, which can we show you? We'll try and bring you those. But I can't see you in a pair of Birkenstocks.
No, David, I tend to think sometimes that the in-trends aren't always the things that are going to last and actually give you the best sort of long-term look. And as a general rule, I think if big LA-based celebrities are doing something, Jack Barwell's probably not going to do it.
I think that's...
I'm quite happy with that principle.
That's very, very wise. So how do you choose your sartorial choices?
Well, I mean, it depends on what we're wearing. If I'm wearing a suit like this and we're in for professional, then, you know, you go into a nice shoe shop and you find something that, you know, fits the suit look. Black shoes for black suit, more tan for the blue one. But generally with shoes, I'm looking for something that's comfortable, that I want to wear, and that just... I mean, without making it too political, just feels normal. What every day people would wear.
For those people at home who have no idea, this is what I'm talking about. That is
awful.
That is awful.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, that is awful. What is that about? But apparently Gen Z are all over this. Just for those people who don't know, and we talked about this, I had to write down what Gen Z is. You're born between 1995 and 2015.
Yeah, that's me.
That's you.
Me.
So you're a Gen Zer. Apparently, you are really on trend, though, apparently, because the clog's popularity has been fueled by an ugly shoe trend. So ugly shoes are all the rage.
Yeah, that's weird. I I recognise that in my day-to-day life. I have friends who wear shoes like that. It's a sort of like bulkier shoe, I think, is coming back into fashion.
Oh, is it?
I don't know why, but...
Right. Talking of coming back into fashion, if you drink alcohol, Gen Zers, this is a bit shocking to me, are putting blue cheese in their cocktail. Apparently the ultimate ingredient to make a savoury cocktail is to put in blue cheese, particularly Stilton. It's a revival amongst younger shoppers. They're experimenting with recipes going viral on social media. Blue cheese martinis and tomatinis. Gen Z have been shunning all the things that we used to drink. Fruity punch, the porn star martini. I mean, you can't go wrong with a porn star martini as far as I'm concerned. Or a gin and tonic in my case. Blue cheese in a cocktail?
Nah, it doesn't sound quite right.
No?
Not sure.
Are you a cocktail maker?
No, I don't really drink cocktails. I'm acquainted with the pitchers and Wetherspoons. I don't know if you are. Which I also
acquainted with.
Yeah.
Yes. So a pitcher of what?
So,
I mean, obviously
they
drink responsibly.
Variety of different names, but they're kind of filled with ice and some energy drinks. But a bit like what you're describing, a sort of fruity kind of mix.
So fruity is still in for Jen?
I think possibly, yeah.
Yeah, blue cheese or fruit?
Oh, definitely the fruit, David. Look, I'm never going to tell young people to stay away from the blue. I mean, that's what I'm really trying to convince them long term.
Very good.
But I'm not sure the blue cheese is the way to go about doing that, and that seems a little bit strange to me.
So apparently, this is Jack Parker, 23, from Kent, tried out the drink courtesy of an influencer. Here we go again. That's your TikTok. A.D. Smith. Apparently, they then put this blue cheese in. It's a blend of 1912 Stilton bourbon maple syrup, Angostura, and chocolate bitter. And apparently it takes 5 days to make this thing. That's suffering for your art.
Yeah, that sounds like a misplaced use of time, I think.
I think it's a huge misplaced use of time. Talking of which, time is tight because we only have a few days to go until Christmas. Are you all done, prepared?
Got everything bought
Have you?
nice and ahead of time. You've got to be on it, David, so that you can have a nice last couple of days before Christmas. I think that's really, really important.
Well, apparently tomorrow is Manic Monday. 16 million shoppers online, in-store splurging 1.46 billion. We've been showing people tech gifts. We've got some other gifts coming up in a minute for those last-minute things. Lots of people panicking and trying to get bargains. Are you all done?
Yeah, well, I'm one of four, so we split the presents between us 4 siblings. So we just get one present for sort of between the 4 of us, if that makes sense.
No. Explain that.
So my sister, my brother, and
Yes.
and my other sister will just get one present between us 4 for our father, our mother.
I see. Okay,
yeah.
but you pitch in more money.
Yeah, we should split it 4 ways.
That's nice.
Yeah, I think it's the best way, because then you just get something better for them.
And then do you buy for each of your siblings?
No, but we've got a Secret Santa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. And what do you? And are you one of?
I've bought for the siblings, bought for the parents.
How many siblings?
I've got 2 siblings, but not here to show off. But if I can make one semi-serious point for maybe.
Yes.
Online culture for shopping is great and Amazon is wonderful, but let's remember our small businesses.
I agree.
Which are struggling this Christmas. Where I come from, down in Hollington, Sidmouth, we have amazing small businesses in East Devon, and if you've got the opportunity to go out
politician
and buy something from a local shop,
honestly, you're speaking
it's a
like
great
a politician.
opportunity.
No, I totally
speak
agree.
like an ordinary person, David, that wants our small business to see out this Labour government.
I totally agree, and also you're right about actually going shopping on a high street, and the footfall's really important. And if we don't do that, and I'm guilty as anyone, but that's also because I do crazy hours, so it means that people do turn to online. But if you lose it, it never comes back, does it?
I just think our businesses helped us out a few years ago during COVID, and it's our turn to return the favour.
Well said, and I assume you'll agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well done, well done. Thank you very much. And let me wish you a very happy Christmas as well. I hope you have a fantastic time.
Same to you.
William Barclay, undergraduate student of philosophy and politics, Jack Barwell, Conservative campaign manager. That was today's Future Politics panel.
The Future Politics panel.